Welcome back. Now, with just 26 days to the election, Jubilee and NASA are locked in a bitter feud over the printing of the presidential ballot papers. While Jubilee insists IEBC should be left alone to procure the ballots, NASA, on the other hand, wants the court ruling that requires the Electoral Commission to engage the public before awarding the tender implemented. So what's the way forward? We talked to Senator Kipchumba Murkomen, Suna East MP Junaid Mohammed, and former IEBC Commissioner Thomas Letangule, now an election expert. The hashtag is the big question on Twitter. You can also text us on 22422. Thank you, gentlemen, for making time for us tonight. Very quickly, a look at the demands by NASA now. They are saying, that is after the meeting yesterday of representatives of presidential candidates and some presidential candidates, direct procurement the only option, identify a reputable international vendor, Al-Ghurairi printing firm should not be given the tender again. They also say constitute an ad hoc procurement committee, involve all presidential candidates and invite external expertise. NASA also wants now that tender split into two so that we'll have the first vendor supply of ballot papers and the second vendor supplying the results declaration forms, and political parties to monitor printing and distribution. Well, Jubilee have responded today. We can listen now to what Deputy President Ruto has said about this.
Very clear to our competitors that Jubilee will not participate in any committee or in any discussion on matters to do with tenders, because Jubilee does not have a printing press. We do not have expertise on procurement. We have no tenderpreneurs. We want IEBC to discharge their responsibility, agree with whoever they want, on whatever company they want. All we want is ballot papers on the 8th of August so that Kenya can choose the leaders of the future.
Again, thank you for making time for us tonight, gentlemen. I'll start with you, Junaid, Honorable Junaid. You're saying, in other words, presidential candidates, representatives should be involved now in this process of procuring ballot papers. Why?
You see, Hussein, first let's look at the history of this issue. This issue was contested in court. We went to court, and the court nullified that contract and said that there was no public participation. First of all, I want to tell the Deputy President and Jubilee that nobody has invited them to any committee. Inviting Jubilee to any committee, you know what can happen. They will take the tender. So what we are doing is that we want this matter handled in a very transparent way. As per the law, we want IEBC to do it in a way that builds confidence, in a way that has public participation, in a way that can make everybody have trust in the process of procuring the ballot papers. So what we are demanding is just transparency. We're not demanding anything more than that. And you see, now the IEBC is saying that because of time, most likely they are going to do direct procurement. Direct procurement is when the IEBC is, when IEBC will go to the market instead of the market coming to them. Like when they advertise, the market will come to them.
Yeah.
We want in
You're also saying direct procurement is the only option, isn't it?
Of course, if that's
what you're saying.
Yeah, so long as it is done properly, in a very transparent way, we are okay with it. There's no problem.
Okay, you're saying you're not willing to participate in
first of all, myself and Junaid were yesterday in the same in the same meeting, and allow me, Hussein, before I make this discussion, to first say that today we lost one of our county leaders, Honorable Nicholas Biwott, and I'd like to send my condolences on behalf of the people of Elgeyo Marakwet County to his family and his friends and the nation. It's only fair to do so before I can make these comments I'm about to do.
And our condolences again from Royal Media Services to family and friends as well.
Thank you. Okay. So the first thing I want to talk about is Junaid yesterday arrived, and I really hoped that someone was going to pick this in the meeting. Junaid arrived to Orengo after watching Jubilee presentation in, I'm sure, in another room or on the way when they were coming. Then they arrived just when we were about to conclude our recommendation, and then they quickly picked and realized that it is not popular to come and make a presentation that says presidential candidates and NASA should be involved in election, in procurement. What did they do? They spoke a lot of English, and then presented now a document to the chairman, told him, this is a letter we have written to you, go and read. When we went back to home, at 7 o'clock news, I'm seeing NASA has demands. So I asked someone, is it that letter that Orengo was handing and he refused to read? If you go back to the meeting of yesterday, and it was live, I insisted 3 times that whatever they were handing in must be read. But because they were, you can see Junaid today. Junaid doesn't want even to acknowledge that their demand number 2 is constitute an ad hoc procurement committee, involve all presidential candidates.
Correct.
Now, Hussein, listen, we in Jubilee think that IEBC is a constitutional body. It's independent. It has a responsibility, an ability, or ought to have that ability to prepare and print ballot papers. And if we are going to be involved ourselves personally as candidates, we think that it will compromise the process. And I'll give you the best example. The reason why we had very good exams recently in this country is because the NEC plus the Ministry of Education took steps to ensure that the procurement process of the examination papers is such that it's full of integrity, to the extent that the teachers and the students were not involved. Can you imagine if the understanding of the court decision was going to be, let me just conclude, was going to be that in future now in the exams KCSE and KCPE that is upcoming, that you will call teachers, the examiners, and the students and tell them, let's agree on who's going to print the papers. That's ridiculous.
So you, by saying, I'll come to this Letangula shortly, but by saying you constitute an ad hoc procurement committee, and you're saying the presidential candidates representatives should be involved in the process of procuring, or what extent? What are you saying?
What we are saying is that we know procurement will be done by IEBC. We are not fools. That is the mandate of IEBC as an entity, and it's an independent entity. What we are saying is that if you look at the Public Finance Management Act, Section 105, when you are going for direct procurement, you are allowed to allow external people to participate in the committee that is doing the tendering. That's if IEBC wishes to do. But otherwise, while we are adamant about this matter, is what we learned, the lessons we learned from 2013 elections, where some ballot papers were in Kenyatta University, other ballot papers were found somewhere else, where printing of ballot papers were done more than the required number. 2 million people voted for a president at that time. Because those are the kind of issues that we don't want to happen again. We have learned our lessons, we have learned our lessons, we have burnt our fingers, we will not react again.
I think Junet makes a very important point, that in 2013, because the Prime Minister procured biometric identification kits, we had such a terrible elections where the player who was then the former Prime Minister, who is now the former Prime Minister, interfered because he was part of the player, and solely because they were looking for tender. Now, because of that expertise of 2013, they want to take us to that point.
We are discussing ballot papers, not BDR.
But it's still a tendering process. As long as we're discussing tender, it doesn't have to be ballot papers.
We'll come back to that question shortly. Thomas Letangula is the former commissioner of IEBC, now an election expert. How do you weigh in on this matter?
First, I speak as an election expert and a person who knows the processes. Unlike them, I know what cooks in. They don't know. They are watching from the stands. So I'm speaking as a former player. So I know what is happening. Firstly, allow me to comment on the court case because it's now done. First, again, I think the court agreed almost 100% with IEBC that there was no collusion with the printer, Al Ghurair. Again, that there was a finding that the president was not connected to Al Ghurair. They only faulted IEBC on public participation under Article 10, and they said they should have invited other players. And on that basis, they ordered for fresh printing of ballot papers for presidential candidate. Now, that is where the contradiction lies, because one, IEBC has signed one contract with the printer, only one contract. And now you're telling them, separate one printing of the presidential, one election out of 6. Let this other printer print 5, there's no problem, but there's a problem with 1. That is where the contradiction is. And it starts from there, and there is a fallacy, because it has again, it has financial implications. We are still going to pay the other printer anyway. So, again, the court did not look at the public interest. Having said that, I want to say this, that to run away from that court decision, you don't run away from it from public rallies. Let us respect the law. Let us respect the courts. I don't agree with it myself. I don't agree with that decision. But because we are a country ruled by law, let us respect.
You're faulting now. You faulted NASA.
Yeah.
Now you you faulted the court decision.
Yes.
Now you're faulting the Jubilee leadership for castigating
exactly. I think that's not the way to go. The way to go, there are only 2 options. And by the way, before I talk of the options, because there are only two, and the options are very simple. Either appeal against that decision,
which
seek a stay, which IBC must do, and I think they stand a very good chance of getting a stay, because that decision is wrong. That decision, you can't partially walk away from. These are 6 elections. So I think the Court of Appeal will give a stay, and that's my opinion. But going forward, you must again, they are talking from a point of not understanding the process. Let me walk you in a few minutes on what printing entails. Printing entails printing for every single constituency and every single ward and every single polling station. So the package comes one container which has all the ballots for each and every ward, constituency and polling station. So they already come packaged, and that is done by the printer. It involves a lot of logistics. Now, where we are this time, and you're telling the IBC, look for another printer for the presidential ballots. That is about 20 million ballots, 20 to 25, given the allowance for extra ballots, a little bit of extra ballots. And there is no time. But there is a way out, and I say there are 2 ways forward. One is the appeal option. But I will advise IBC that although you may go to the Court of Appeal and you stand a chance, don't wait for the Court of Appeal decision. You must immediately engage a printer outside the country, preferably in Europe, because I can't advise South Africa or India. There are many challenges in those countries, and you all know. So we have to look for another printer, because again, you understand, printing is not really complicated nowadays. The artworks are ready. Once we find a printer, it's easier to go that way. It's a challenge, but I wish the Court of Appeal can stop this thing.
Let Junaid talk first.
Then first, we want Jubilee to respect the courts, as the Commissioner said. Jubilee themselves are products of a court. The Supreme Court is the one that put them on that seat they're sitting on today. They didn't win any election in 2013. But we respected the decision of the Supreme Court by then. Now, when the court has pronounced itself on an issue, and Jubilee is loitering around in the country, talking about NASA wanting to do the printing of the ballot papers, that is just lack of agenda to tell the country. Because that is not an agenda to tell Kenyans, because you know very well that NASA cannot print ballot papers for an election that they are participating in. Secondly, I agree totally with what the former commissioner has said. But there are only 2 options in this matter. Either to appeal the case, which they have done, and wait for the outcome. And I can assure you, if we lose it, we will go to Supreme Court. We will not leave it there. We will not allow Al Ghurair to print any ballot papers in Kenya.
Although what you challenged, you'll speak. What you had challenged in court was dismissed.
Yeah, they were dismissed.
No, that one is splitting hairs.
It's okay.
We won the case.
It's okay. Either way, what you said about
the grounds. The grounds were really, all the grounds were dismissed.
But what you said about Al Ghurair,
we still won the case.
Fine. What you said about Al Ghurair, you're saying in these demands that Al Ghurair should not be given that tender.
Correct.
Legally, after the court ruling, Al Ghurair can bid if there's bidding, or there can be direct procurement, and Al Ghurair can still get the tender, isn't it?
No, they cannot.
Legally.
The reason being, first you know what happened previously. Al Ghurair, the Public Procurement Administration ruled against them. IBC gave them again in direct procurement. Again, if IBC decides to give them, then there's fish.
No, you see,
I think it's important to. I'm one of the people who criticize the courts in Baringo and the president and deputy president. First of all, there is a fallacious argument out there, including from my own Law Society of Kenya and some misguided lawyers, that you cannot criticize a judge or a judgment unless you are doing it before the courts. Let me underscore the most important point here, that the Constitution says the sovereign power belongs to the people, and that power can only be donated to the judiciary, executive, and legislature. Number 2, that the 3 arms of government, though independent, they are also interdependent on each other. Number 3 is to say that the right to criticize a decision that has been made in the courts is not only for lawyers or jurists. it is actually for Mama Mboga, so that every Kenyan has a right to hold accountable judicial decisions, and any judge who makes a decision.
Okay.
The president, no, you can't cut me short. I mean, this, So the point I'm trying to make is this, that criticizing a judge, criticizing a judgment, is actually within the constitutional right of every citizen of this republic, including the president and the deputy president and myself and any other person. Number two, and I want to say this with tremendous respect, the court fraternity has been accusing the Supreme Court. In fact, Raila Odinga called it Koti Bandia. For the last 4 years, it has been a continuous conversation about criticism of the Supreme Court. That is not enough. Before the appeal of this decision that was given by the Court of Appeal, the same James Orengo stood in a press conference and intimidated the Court of Appeal by telling them that we will not expect them to change this decision, and if they do, we are not going to participate in the elections. So now, when some of us, when some of us who are actually respectful of the independent institutions are only criticizing decisions that have been made, you cannot tell us that that is unconstitutional. But wait, just wait. We must. Number two, the commission has talked about the possibility of success in Court of Appeal. It's not just on the grounds of unreasonability of the decision of the court. I have given the example of printing exams, for example, because this thing applies to all procurement. It is also on the basis of bias. We came out yesterday, and I did not speak, it was our Secretary General who talked and said that there is a relationship between one of the judges and one of the principal litigants and leader of NASA. And I want to say this with tremendous respect. If that will be one of the grounds of IBC or one of the grounds of any appellant, there is enough already a decision of the court where 3 judges, Justice Tunoi, Justice Owor, and Justice Laka, sat in a decision of what we call Manchester Outfitters, and it was found later that Justice Laka had acted for Manchester Outfitters some years back, and the Court of Appeal reversed that decision on only the basis, on the simple basis that one judge had acted for that. So if there will be, and I've seen some people talking about that, saying, oh, there were 3 judges.
First, the decision on that matter was done by a 3-bench judge. It is very unethical and immoral for a lawyer like Senator Kipchumba Murkomen to vilify a judge based on his ethnicity and based on his marriage relationship. It is very unethical. Just a minute, give me time. You see, the wife of that judge was not on the bench. She was not part of the bench that made a decision on that matter. She may be doing other work in the country. She may be building a nation in other spheres. It is very immoral for Jubilee to take this country to that level where you discuss marriage, relationships, ethnicity, because I remember the majority leader one time saying that you cannot be on the bench and playing tribal politics in the courts. It is very
I have to ask this question now. You, I mean, he has said very clearly, in some instances, the opposition has been quoted, and we have seen when you're saying if it is not going to be this decision, then you're not going to participate, which sometimes has been interpreted as threatening the judiciary as well. But even for you, Murkomen, it wasn't about criticizing the judgment. We saw very well the Jubilee leadership saying the opposition, the judiciary, is now in cahoots with the opposition.
Absolutely.
That is not about accusation. That is not about the judgment.
Mark my words, and it was actually my words, and I had also the president repeat the same thing. We cannot allow the judiciary to aid. The words we said is to aid by their decisions the NASA fraternity to violate the constitution and the democratic society. Can I complete something? No, let me just complete something. I can excuse my friend Junaid because he's not a lawyer.
It doesn't matter.
Can I complete? Let me complete. Rule 5 of the Judicial Officers Ethics Code under Public Officers Ethics Act provides that a judge can disqualify himself on the last ground is if he or his spouse or a person related to either of them or the spouse of such person or a friend is a party to proceedings.
That's fine.
So it's in black and white. It's the law. So I don't know if it is true that Orengo is related to the judge. But one now, is it true whether Orengo is related? I don't know. But if you want,
if you allow two politicians to argue on the opposing,
I have to ask that question because he hasn't responded.
On the opposing ground, we'll never end this debate.
You'll give me your position, but let me just respond to this. This is an accusation against the judiciary.
Absolutely.
That they could be in cahoots with the opposition.
Absolutely.
Number one. And number two, IBC has already appealed.
Yeah.
Will this not give now undue pressure
the Chief Justice
to these judges? Because there's an appeal process going on.
Let me take you back to what I said. There is no institution of government or any person who serves the public who is immune from criticism. Let's start from there. Not by any provision of the Constitution. Number two, and most important, is that our criticism of the judgment and the decision of the judge, including the pronouncements of the Chief Justice, are actually within the constitutional responsibility for all of us to ensure that we provide checks and balances to those institutions.
But you're not doing something this matter as the opposition when it comes to criticizing.
And
my take was saying on this is, you see, once two politicians on the opposing sides talk on this, there are bound to be a lot of back and forth. The point is this, and we must get this clear. It is true the court has made its pronouncement. The court, you may disagree with it, as I do. I do not agree with that judgment myself. I do not find the basis in which the judges did. But the best way to go is not to personalize it or to politicize it. I think to deal with this problem, and I have said this before, let us be rational. Let us appeal against the decision. Those judges are not final. Let us appeal. Let us take our grounds again to the Court of Appeal. That's why we have that system. Okay? So I don't think bashing judges in public is something. It's not the right thing. And again, by the way, one critical connected point is that because of the actions of the courts and politicians, they are now intimidating the IBC completely, such that IBC sits and says, if we make this decision, who will bash us? Is it the politicians or the courts? So you are creating an IBC which is not confident.
Gentlemen,
that's why I say.
Still want let's just to finish this. How the key thing now is, what is the way forward? You're saying if the appeal is the ruling by the High Court is overturned, to the Supreme Court. Okay. But what is the way forward? Al Ghurair told Citizen TV, and this is why I want to respond. They told Sam Gituku, who was in Dubai recently, that they will need between 10 to 12 days to print the presidential ballot papers, having to work 24 hours a day. Now, this will, if the printing was to begin on the 18th of July, that is next Tuesday. You're still talking, they're still squabbling. IBC has not yet said how the retendering will be done, and they're saying they will appeal.
Yes.
So do we really have time?
Well, time is not in our favor, but there is a chance the Court of Appeal can give this matter priority and grant a stay, in which case then Al Ghurair will do the job. But as a contingency measure, and I'm talking this as having been an insider in IBC, you know, printing, as I said, there are a lot of challenges, there are a lot of work to be done, and as Al Ghurair says, they need more than 12 days. But as a contingency measure, because the artworks are ready, remember, before you do anything about printing, the artworks must be ready. I think they need to quickly identify another printer just to be ready, because remember, all these things are also perceptions, and they need to be ready for it.
And that is my next question.
Elections, let me finish this. Elections are about also perceptions and what people feel about. So they need to have a contingency plan. And because in elections, there are strategic materials and non-strategic materials. For example, the ballot paper is a strategic material. And there are non-strategic material like say the ink, the booth, and other materials which will be on site before elections. The ballot paper reaches the polling stations a few hours to voting day. And therefore, they still have a little time to go for direct procurement, just have in stay. I mean, I'm not telling the chairman and the commissioners to just sit and wait for the Court of Appeal. No, they shouldn't do that.
So you're talking about election, being again as an election expert now, and being in the IBC. You're also talking about, and we're coming elsewhere in on this, as well as Jeanette, you're talking about an election also being about perception.
Yes.
So there's been a lot of problems with one side of the coalition in as far as Al Ghurair is concerned.
Exactly.
So if IBC goes ahead with this appeal, and if the appeals court overturns the High Court decision,
Yes.
they are saying they'll go to the Supreme Court. And either way, already one side has said they don't want, they've cast doubts on Al Ghurair. So if it's about perception,
you know, I've already said this. We have 6 elections. Al Ghurair is printing 5. So you trust Al Ghurair with 5 elections. You don't trust with 1. So that perception is 1. Number two, let me answer this. If then the Court of Appeal stays this decision of the High Court, then IBC has a clean slate. They have the right to proceed with the contract.
Of course.
If the Court of Appeal, because we must respect the law. Okay. But if they don't agree, that's why I'm telling them, have a contingency plan. Be ready, because perceptions are there. If your appeal is dismissed, you should be ready to have another printer.
Within time. So, another question, we've been asking this all this week when we behind these discussions. You okay with 5 other ballot papers for 5 other positions being printed, but not the presidential ballot paper?
Yes. We are okay with other 5. If they want.
I mean,
with the election which is at a very high risk, which you believe can steal, is the presidential election. They cannot steal the others. They're not interested in who becomes the MP where I come from. I'm not interested if he becomes senator or not. I wish him well. The election that is known for stealing in Kenya is the presidential election. That is the one that we must guard by all means. By all means.
So, Hussein, it's our considered view that IBC is damned if they do, damned if they don't do. It's also our considered view that there is nothing that IBC can do to please NASA. The NASA, as he quite knows now, they have more than 30 cases in court. They have lined one case after the other. You know, whether it is for the printing of the ballot paper, they're talking about electronic material. We have actually a tabulation of 27 cases and about 3
about the military.
Yes, exactly, all those cases.
Using of military
and I'm just saying, Hussein, with importance, that how ironic it is for a man who has pronounced that he's taking Kenyans to Canaan. I have never read anywhere from Genesis to Revelation where Joshua had to erect court cases on the way to Canaan. And I really find it, you know, it is their constitutional right to go to court. In fact, I cannot say it is wrong, but the Bible says everything is permissible, but not everything is beneficial. So if all of us just want to erect roadblocks for IBC not to succeed,
what is the way forward?
For me, this is my position.
You're all saying elections have to be held at the
This is my position. The chairman of IBC and the commissioners on the commission must demonstrate leadership, must take charge of their constitutional responsibility, must realize that elections is not about Jubilee and NASA. It's about the country, and it's about those who are coming to cast their ballot papers, who can vote neither for NASA or Jubilee or whatever place they want to vote. They must stand and be the independent institution that was intended by the Constitution and make decisions independently. Number 2 is I want to assure the nation that we in Jubilee have no problem if NASA, and I want to repeat this, if NASA is going to be given the contract to print the ballot papers, we have no problem. By the way, we know, because we have read the law, the place you must take care when voting is done is at the polling station, to ensure that every ballot paper that comes there has not been pre-marked, and that you have an agent, and ensure that the people who vote are the ones whose biometrics have been marked. Even if we are going to use exercise books, plain blank exercise books for people to write their names, we will not have a problem.
What's the way forward?
The way forward. First, why we are going to court is because we are people who respect the rule of law. We can sort out our things on the street, but we feel that if we have a burning issue that we feel is an impediment to the election being free and fair, we want the court to pronounce itself. And we must respect court decisions. We respected the Supreme Court judgment on Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto. We moved on for 5 years. Jubilee should respect the decisions of the court, because that is the final arbiter on any issue that we fight over. Secondly, the way forward is we are not interested in printing any ballot paper. We know that's not our mandate. It's the mandate of Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. But they must do things within the law, within the Constitution. They must do it transparently. That builds confidence, trust, the way the former commissioner has said. Thirdly, Jubilee should not be scared of when we go to court, because the excesses they do as government, the only remedy we have is the court. Because these people, if it was their wish, there should have been no elections in Kenya. We should have just told them go ahead with the other 5 years.
By the way,
and other things.
Hussein, I think politicians, let us be reasonable. Let us give this commission a chance to work and deliver.
Yeah.
I mean, for now, Hussein, the commission is battling a lot of court cases rather than preparing for elections. And it's not fair to that commission. I have said here now that the commission is so intimidated by the politicians and the courts that they don't know if they say this, what will the politicians say, or what will the court say.
But if they do everything right constitutionally,
they should be given a chance to do their work. They know what they are supposed to do.
Within the law,
within the law, and they can always deliver.
Okay.
So I think Hussein, me on the way forward, as I have said, even as the commission is battling this issue, they still have a little bit of time to finalize on this matter. My appeal is, let us allow the commission. I've been very steadfast on this. Let us allow this commission to deliver, because they will. There's a lot of panic, because we're going towards election. All these politicians are panicking.
You see?
I was saying, I just want to add, in a very straightforward way, it's our humble belief that our colleagues in the NASA side are not prepared for the elections. It's also our humble submissions that their alternative to winning the elections is to actually disrupt a win by Jubilee.
We had actually a good point.
I want to react on
we really don't want to sanitize that by creating an elections that is flawed. So therefore, IBC actually should take responsibility, and we who are the players should not be also be pretending to be referees.
Hussein, we are ready to support IBC to do their work, to give them ample time to do their work, so long as they are doing things within the law and within the constitution. We gave Commissioner Letambule Group ample time in 2013. You can remember the kind of election they did for Kenyans.
It was a perfect election. The circumstances, my friend.
And he left office.
Let me tell you, we did the best in the circumstances. And I can tell you, in the circumstances that we were under more strain than this other commission now. They are lucky that we have set all the systems. And by the way, Hussein, I've been spending some time now, since I came out of the commission, to put my memo into order. I've been on this project for 2 years, and what we have now is the trailblazer. It also talks about election processes and what happens. And I've taken time to document and to set the record straight. Some of the things that we've done are completely above board. And in this book, and I urge you politicians to buy it, you will find that you will learn a lot on how to manage yourself and the elections. So I have put it because, as an expert in election and election processes, I believe I have a duty to educate my peers who are coming and to people coming also after me and the politicians.
Thank you.
This one will bless you, my friend.
I'm ready to buy.
You're launching it.
I'm launching it on Saturday, this Saturday, 13th, Radisson Blue.
And all the best, all the best.
Thank you.
All the best. That is Commissioner, former IBC Commissioner Thomas Itangule, now an elections expert. Senator Kipchumba Murkomen, also the Deputy Majority Leader in the Senate, and Junaid Mohammed, who is the MP, Suna East. Thank you so much for making time for us tonight. Keep talking to us. The hashtag is the big question on Twitter. You can text us on 22422. We are back after this break.